All right, wow. I am really filled up today. Wow, this has been tremendous. And we're wrapping up, and just a few, some closing comments before we get to celebrate together and maybe go out and get our steps. So I'd like to just welcome back Irene Higginson, our visiting professor, just for some last words, and then I'll be excited to introduce Patricia Gibbs to say a few words, and then I'll just wrap up. Irene, please. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity of being here with you in this amazing celebration. It's really terrific, and as I understand it, it's the end of a series of events. So one of the things that I was reflecting on during the day that I think we don't always do enough in palliative care and much of healthcare is celebrating what we're good at. So I think you all deserve a real round of applause for doing that over the last few weeks on this. But what I also enjoyed about today was its conjunction of the past and honoring the past and the achievements done with the eye to the future. And, you know, we had all those amazing, inspiring projects this morning across the areas of, you know, reaching out where access is poor, reaching different communities, looking at the education that we can do, thinking about reaching to different ethnic groups, and then, wow, the interdisciplinary panel, which was just, I thought, really terrific. And I loved the breadth of the interdisciplinary grouping as well. And I would say that it made me reflect that, I mean, one of the reasons why I was attracted to palliative care, there were a number, was actually its deep commitment to interprofessional working, and it is important. I was impressed by the symphony and the dance, the discussion about growth and policy and scale, and I think the session that we've just had about the voice of the person who's been receiving palliative care has been really very moving and telling. And I suppose the one thing I reflected in is the sort of patchwork access, though. I mean, it was kind of lucky that the family member, Michael's family member, knew how to get access. And I think one of the challenges that we face in palliative care is thinking about how we do that. But I want to sort of close it with kind of just a little thought about, you know, the challenges in front of us are quite large and difficult and surmountable at times. And I was impressed by the very beginning of this service where, I mean, Steve was writing his policies and so on, and somebody said, oh, come on, let's just do it and get on with it, you know. And you chose a date and you did. And it made me think of something, and I was looking for where the quote came from, but I didn't have time to find it, but it brought it into my mind. Is one of the things that I was very impressed with on some of the training that I've had the privilege to be part of in the UK around, you know, how you lead groups and how you develop groups, is the idea of changing the world one conversation at a time. And I suppose that in some ways that is quite an important thing that we do, that takes the big picture into the small picture. So I'd really encourage you all to keep going with these amazing innovations that are so important for the world, and your energy and dedication to these conversations one at a time with people as you meet them. You were talking over there about intensive care and changing the minds of the intensivists, not always an easy thing, but I guess that you are in this way of changing the world one conversation at a time. So keep going, and I'll be watching from the other side of the world, and I'll look forward to seeing all that amazing progress. But thank you again for having me here, and thank you for today.
Thank you so much, Irene, for joining us and for your words and your wisdom. It's now my pleasure to introduce Patricia Gibbs. Patricia is the founder of the San Francisco Free Clinic here in San Francisco. She's a family medicine physician. Before medicine, Patricia was a member of the United States ski team. And after a career as a professional skier, she went to medical school at Yale, where she met her husband, Richard. They did residency in family medicine at the University of Washington, and then came back to San Francisco and founded the San Francisco Free Clinic in 1993. It just celebrated its 30th year, providing free medical care to the citizens of San Francisco, an incredibly important institution. We have a very interesting connection with the San Francisco Free Clinic, not just Tricia, but Sarah Nuri, who'd actually worked at the San Francisco Free Clinic when she was here as a fellow, so that was a fun little connection there as well. Tricia's also a musician. She's a member of our Patient Family Advisory Council. She's been a strong and steadfast supporter of palliative care. I had the privilege of meeting Tricia when I cared for her dad, Warren. And Jane Hawgood, who many of you met last night, who was our social work at the time, we were asked to see Warren when he was in the hospital near the end of his life. And Jane and I walked in the room, and he was about to play a song that he had written. He was also a musician. He is the founder and he's endowed Hardly Strictly Bluegrass. So if any of you have ever been to that, you have Warren Hellman to thank for that. And there he was with his banjo when he was about to play, and we walked in and he put down his banjo and he said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll play later." And Jane and I sat down and he said, "Oh no, please, we really want to hear your song." So he was kind enough to play it in what would be the only time that song got played, the song that he wrote. And it was really quite a privilege. And he died soon thereafter in a comfort care suite. But it was a real privilege to get to know him briefly and to be able to take care of him, and then to get to know Tricia and your sister, Judith, and to have your support on this journey going forward. So Tricia, thank you for being here in your many roles and supporting us, and for sharing a few words. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I feel tired just hearing all those things that I'm doing. I hope it's okay. I'm going to speak for around 9 to 10 minutes, so just to prep you for that. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. It truly is an honor to be here and get the chance to reflect on my relationship with the amazing specialty of family medicine. Excuse me, that was a slip. Palliative medicine. I love family medicine too, so get a little plug in there. I'm going to talk about the growth of my interest and involvement with palliative care at UCSF over time, and to end with something very special that I discovered about it as I was preparing these comments. I thought it would help to start by describing who I am in some kind of logical order based on the sequence of my encounter with the specialty. So I am a physician, I'm a daughter, philanthropic supporter, and a Patient Family Advisory Council member. I'm going to say PFAC from now on. As a physician, of course, we all witness patients dying in our training. I'd venture to say that most all doctors have had the experience of what it felt like if there were excessive intervention, kind of mismatch between what medicine could offer to a dying patient and what the patient really needed at the time. As an intern on the internal medicine service, I participated in the administration of CPR to a patient in the ICU. He had small cell lung cancer and widespread metastases, and he had gone into respiratory failure and then cardiac arrest. I had never met the patient before. After about a half hour, the third-year resident in charge called an end to the CPR and pronounced the patient dead. I stopped chest compressions and looked around at the medical personnel surrounding the bed. Someone mentioned that we should inform the family who were out in the waiting room. And it struck me like a deep, deep arrow that it was a terrible shame that they hadn't been there during the last moments of the patient's life. Years later, I saw Dr. Pantilat speak at an internal medicine conference in the basement of one of the hotels here in town. I had not heard much about palliative medicine before, and thinking back to the patient I'd seen as an intern, what Steve described sounded quite wonderful. Not long after that, my father, Warren Hellman, whom you've heard about, became ill with lymphoma. It was a terrible shock for someone who was used to being robust and healthy. As some of you may know, he was a brilliant investment banker. He was also tremendously active, skiing every weekend and competing in 100-mile running races and other amazing things, and had more recently found something that touched him very deeply and spiritually, and that was music. Both the music he supported through the Free Bluegrass Festival at Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, and the music he played with his band, the Wranglers. My dad was not ready to be sick or to die, and because of the way we worked as a family, it was hard for us to talk to him, to let him tell his story about how he wanted to live the final months and days of his life. And so he kept on going with cancer treatment, even when his blood counts were falling to vanishingly low levels, and he felt entirely awful. But thank heavens, his doctors referred him to palliative medicine so he could have this conversation. So the day before Dad was introduced to the palliative medicine team, he'd been unconscious for 24 hours, but thanks to some blood transfusions, he'd recovered and was feeling well enough to invite in visitors, including his band member and co-writer, Colleen Brown. I think Steve introduced this story, but he just finished writing a new song called The Big Twang Theory, and Colleen had added some final touches on the lyrics. They were about to sing the final version of the song for the first time when Steve came in with Jane Hoggett to meet him. I'm sure they had a full panel of patients to see that day, and he wanted to get down to business. But Dad was annoyed. He didn't want to talk to a doctor. He wanted to play the song. But instead of rushing a medical agenda, Steve asked if he could hear the song. Dad went ahead and played it. It was clear that everyone loved it. Dad was happy and relaxed after that and comfortable to have the conversation describing what he wanted for the life that remained to him. So he became a palliative care team patient, and when he returned the next day with a fatal intracranial bleed, was fortunate enough to be admitted to the Comfort Suites, where he received the medicines he needed to keep him comfortable and where family, friends, and fellow band members could meet and say goodbye over the following days, ushering him to the next life with laughter, tears, and songs, medicine and music. Anyway, at that moment, I realized that what I wanted more than anything in the world was to play a part in making this kind of care available to all who need it. I ended up getting involved in two ways, philanthropy and advocacy via the PFAC. Starting with the philanthropy part. Thanks to the enormous generosity of my father, my three sibs and I sit on the board of directors of a family foundation, which was recipient of a large share of his estate. After Dad died, we all agreed we wanted to support palliative care at UCSF in a very significant way. We joined up with a couple of similar enthusiasts, John Bernard and Alan Cates, and in 2015, Steve Pantilat became the newly created Cates Bernard and Hellman Distinguished Chair of Palliative Medicine. Thanks to the great work Steve and others on the palliative care team had done over the first 15 years since the birth of specialty at UCSF, the department was poised for near miraculous growth, it seemed to me. It's amazing to think back now and remember conversations we'd have like, wouldn't it be incredible if there would be a second inpatient team here at UCSF? And how great it would be if there could be an outpatient palliative care clinic. All of this seemed like a dream, but in short order became reality. Other sources of funding, both private and public, came in, and services continued to grow. A few milestones here, though by no means exhaustive. In 2018, the program launched the Division of Palliative Medicine, achieving additional prominence, status, and resources as a result. That same year, the program expanded by adding a pediatric fellowship position, and the faculty has more than doubled since then, I believe. In 2021, they launched their inpatient hospice service in collaboration with By the Bay Health and extended out into the community with a palliative care service at the Jewish Home. In 2022, they started a social justice curriculum for the fellowship and appointed Dr. Sarah Nouri, yay, Associate Chief of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And yesterday, I was most super excited to hear presentations on a number of new and innovative clinical research projects funded by the Cambia Health Foundation. Now the story about my involvement with the PFAC. After the department launched the Distinguished Chair in Palliative Medicine back in 2015, Dr. Pantilat asked me to join, and I readily agreed, of course. I soon was fortunate to meet Terry Rose and a most wonderful group of fellow council members, and to discover that each and every one had a unique and personal story to tell about their encounter with palliative care as caregivers and family members of patients. They all felt as passionately about palliative medicine as I did, and were committed to its spread and development at UCSF and beyond. We've had a chance to weigh in on many subjects over the time, from input on websites and promotional materials to clinic protocols to ideas about how to make the specialty understandable and accessible to others. What an amazing, creative, and intelligent group they are. And now my special discovery about palliative care. At each PFAC meeting, in addition to filling us in on the progress of UCSF palliative medicine, Steve would end the meeting with a poem. Each one was particularly suited to the times and seemed to provide just the right antidote to whatever malaise or challenge might be ailing the world. This practice spanned both good times and pandemics, times of general malaise and unrest, and times of peace and progress. He would generally send us a copy of the poem via email after each meeting. In preparation for this event today, I went back to search my email for all of these messages. There's a lot of them. The first one I found was from our meeting just over 8 years ago, May 1st of 2016. In some uncanny way, it connects mysteriously with two key stories in my talk today, the one about the patient in the ICU and the one about my dad. It's called Do Not Resuscitate by Dr. Brenda Butka. I thought I would read it now. I can say your father is dying. I can say wishing will not make it so. Belief doesn't change a thing. I can say love does not conquer all. Miracles are pretty stories told in church. The movies you saw as a child are lies. Blind hope is not a recipe for success. Underdogs usually lose. Death is not the worst thing, it is just the last thing. But for you, that is not true. I can say we have to pretend that we can bring him wheezing back to you like an old accordion, chest pleating in and out, singing his customary songs. Oxygen bumping its hurdy-gurdy way again through his ancient heart. But how can I tell you how? Someone will shout down the hallway, kneel frantic on the bed, lean his fists against that old breastbone, sharp, frail, 1,000, 1,000, and count it out. I can say, we should not do this. He will never be the same. I can say, if it were my father, I can say, do not confuse resuscitation with resurrection, although neither works particularly well. You look like you are drowning, pallid and slow, in the waiting room's underwater light. So tell me again. Tell me about your father. In human life, we look for meaning when the world seems shrouded in darkness, pain, or confusion. Poems, music, art in general are ways of capturing and expressing this meaning. Art is helpful to all forms of medicine, but for palliative care, it is, along with medicines, procedures, and prayers, an essential part of the formulary. A poem to open and heal the hearts of patients, providers, and family members. A song to allow my father to tell the story that he needed to tell before he died. Thank you to Steve Pantilat and everyone in palliative medicine, all of you, for making this practice strong for the world. And now, happy 25th anniversary. Hope you all get a chance to celebrate, and I'm very happy to have been part of this.
Well, Tricia, thank you so much for that. That was just beautiful. And that's a great poem. Probably a good time just to, I think, to mention someone that we've talked about a little bit, but just to highlight and honor Steve McPhee, who was there at the beginning as well. Mike talked about Steve a little bit yesterday. And Carol Mowbray talked about the Palm Pilot that Steve carried. I don't know if you're old enough, you actually maybe had a Palm Pilot at one point. It was the kind of the essence of technology at some ancient time. And Steve McPhee was known for loading his Palm Pilot with poems that he would read to patients at the bedside twice. It was always Steve's tradition to read a poem twice because it would really sink in, and he called it his Poem Pilot instead of his Palm Pilot. And it's really become a tradition for us. That's true. It's become a tradition in a way that speaks to the heart, I think in ways that other types of literature maybe can't do. And it lives on, as we heard from Mike in the Mary Center, and the great ways to use poetry to touch patients and providers and address grief and well-being. So it's a fitting bookend, I guess, to this celebration. In thinking about closing, well, first of all, I just want to reflect on the day. Again, just an incredible amount of work. I've heard from many of you, wow, we should do this more. It was great to hear what people are doing, and we'll get some feedback on this, but I've been incredibly inspired by the work, and I feel like I know all the work, and I'm inspired. And I just realize there's a large division working in many different settings. There are so many things going on, it's actually hard to know. And one way to build our community around this work and to find synergies and collaborations is for us to know what we are all doing. So look forward perhaps to more of these kinds of events where we can share even more of our work together and with each other and really continue to move this really important work forward. We have this tradition in the fellowship. I think Tom really started this at graduation. I hope I'm not giving away too much to the fellows, and it'll get you thinking, I think, maybe too much. But to find a word that describes, right, each person. So maybe our former fellows remember the word that was chosen, and Carly's continued this tradition. But I was thinking, what are the words that sort of describe us as a division? And I came up with a few. I couldn't think of just one, so I thought of a few that I want to share with you here in closing. And the first word that came to my mind, well, a lot of words came to my mind, but I thought of excellence. Excellence, a commitment that we all have to the work that we do. To think deeply about our patients, to really think, how am I going to make care better? And to really think about how I bring excellence to everything that I do, whether it's taking care of patients or teaching, doing my research, doing my scholarly work. And it's that commitment to excellence that really runs through everything that we do. And I was reflecting on what you said earlier, Irene, just about it was availability and competence. And it's not enough to just be available. We have to be competent in what we're doing. We actually have to make the pain better, to make it better. And we have to know how to do that. And I'm really proud of our commitment to excellence. Courage. I think going into palliative medicine still takes a little bit of courage. I used to describe it like swimming upstream a little bit. I think I mentioned that this morning. Anyone who's ever run the Beta Breakers, I don't know if you've run Beta Breakers, there's that group of people who dress as salmon, and they start at the breakers and run all the way to the bay, so they run backward, upstream, basically. And when I've run the Beta Breakers, I always look at that group and I think that's us. I think that's palliative care. I feel like we're often swimming upstream, you know? We're in this health system that's hierarchical. It's just like do more stuff to people and more intervention, and just like, can we do more things? And look, a lot of those things help. So I don't want to, I'm not down on medicine. I am very pro healthcare and pro medicine. I'm just deeply impressed with what we are able to do for our patients. I think Mr. Montez was a great example of what we've been able to do in medicine. So I'm not down on it, but sometimes I am. And just to have the courage to swim in the other direction sometimes and say, let's take a pause. I think the courage to really talk about things that other people don't want to talk about, you know, spirituality and relationship and caregivers, and to, you know, dive into opioids. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know if it's that courageous, but it's hard. You know, there's a lot in the way. There's a lot of stigma around it, and to really dive into these things. To medical aid in dying, and to really wrestle with some of these things that really do take courage to understand. The courage to understand the value of quality of life, and that you can feel healed even if you're not cured. That, you know, this emphasis on cure, yeah, that's super important. Life is great, and life is the best outcome, and that there's a lot of other outcomes that we can engage with and help our patients find. And I think the courage also to share our power. I think the interprofessional panel really highlighted that for me. Just this, the ability to share power when you have it, and just how important that is. You know, I think things are hierarchical because people at the top of the hierarchy don't want to share. You know, it's good to be at the top of the hierarchy if you can get there. And yet, I think Talmage said this so clearly, we're better when we have more voices, when we have greater diversity, when we hear from more people. And I really appreciate the courage that it takes to both share power and to embrace it when you have that opportunity. Kindness. I think we bring a lot of kindness to our patients, to our work, to each other. Our interactions with patients are really embedded in kindness. But healthcare is not always kind. It can be really harsh. Training can be harsh. The hospital can be a harsh place. There's a lot of harsh things, and yet confronting that with kindness is a way to really humanize the experience. And I mean kindness as opposed to nice. I don't mean niceness. I think nice is avoiding what is hard. You know, I think it's easy to be nice. Nice is superficial, and nice is indirect. But kindness is honest, even when it's the hard thing to say. Kindness engages with what is hard because it's important to be honest, and it is necessary to be honest about what we're doing. So thank you for the kindness. I couldn't possibly speak about our work without talking about hope, one of my my favorite topics. When you think about the future, what do you hope for? I think that's really the essence of the work that we do, is really helping our patients think about that. You know, when you look to the future, what do you want? What's important to you? And really trying to understand that and bring that to our patients, that even when time is short, you think about the things that you hope for. And we encourage that in our patients by talking about it. We heard how difficult it can be when patients don't have hope, and Talmage shared that story as well, of really taking away hope. And I appreciate how we find that balance of being honest and still maintaining hope. I've shared this a lot recently because it really struck me. I went back to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying. I mentioned it this morning, published in 1969. It really opened a conversation around death and dying in the United States. And, you know, we talk so much about it. I mean, I know this by heart, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I just know that so well. I know the order in which things come. I know that we bounce around in it, that it's not linear, it's not, you know, stages are not unique. And I went back to it because I thought, well, where's hope in all of this? Because I really see a lot of it in our patients. And so why is it that we know all of that and there's no hope? Why did Elizabeth Kubler-Ross not write about hope? Well, sure enough, there's a whole chapter on hope in the book on death and dying. Somehow hope gets short shrift because it is not a stage of grief. It is actually overlaid across the entire experience of illness. Hope is persistent. And she even writes in the book, no matter the stage of illness or coping mechanism used, all our patients maintain some form of hope until the last moment. And so somehow hope deserves to be in that kind of reactions to grief and reactions to loss. And we encourage that, true hope, real hope for our patients. That is so important for them in the face of serious illness. And the last word that I thought about was love. I think that's been mentioned as well. I think Mike talked about it earlier. It's not a word you hear a lot at work, for sure. It's definitely not a word you hear a lot at in a healthcare system. But I think in palliative care and in palliative medicine, we talk about that, about love, and because we're filled with it. I think we bring a lot of love to this work. Definitely love for our patients, and I think that comes across. Not every patient, but enough. I mean, really. Love for life. I think this work really teaches us to love life. Avitas Donabedian, who's considered sort of the founder of quality improvement, was interviewed near the end of his life. It was published in Health Affairs, I think. And I was really struck when he said that the secret to quality is love. That if you love your patients, you'll sort of work backwards to figure out how to make the care good because you actually care. And my dear friend Randy Curtis, who died of ALS when he, in his last year of life, Randy wrote more papers, I think, in his last year of life than most of us will write. And he's published posthumously, including. And in thinking about the lessons that he takes away, one thing really struck me when he said, work with people you like or even love. And I think that's really wise. I think the flip side is to not work with people you don't like and people you don't love, because that's a drag. And I feel like the luckiest person because I get to work with all of you. People that I really do love. And that goes for everyone that I have the privilege to work with here in the Division of Palliative Medicine. All of our incredible staff, our incredible team, our faculty. I'm really proud of the work that we do together and really appreciate all of you for getting us to this point and for the future we have together. The business consultant, Peter Drucker, said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that has really been borne out here in the Division of Palliative Medicine. We've sort of predicted the future. Terry was reminding me that just before, as we were founding the division back in 2018, we had a little strategic plan. And Terry was just reflecting on how we've implemented every part of it. So, you got to have a vision. You have to think about the future and then go ahead and make it happen because that's the future you're going to have. You can't have the future you can't envision, but you can absolutely have the future that you do envision if you envision it. And that is our work. So as I reflect on the future, I think the most important challenge that we are facing is equitable access to specialty palliative care. We talked a lot about that today. We heard it in Irene's comments this morning in many of the projects, in many of our educational projects. And we just need to figure this one out. We need to make sure that people who need palliative care get it, and it's a multi-pronged process. It's policy, it's advocacy, it's research, it's a whole host of activities that really make this possible, and I'm excited about that challenge and what we're going to do. We do see thousands and thousands of people a year. But more people need this care here and elsewhere, and we are the people to try and figure this one out and make that a reality. Maybe different kinds of science, different kinds of advocacy, but with that goal in mind. We have to grow our workforce. If we're going to do that, we have to grow our workforce, and I was really excited to hear about the work that we're doing in that area. Somewhere out there is an undergraduate who's going to be in our pipeline program who one day is going to be on this faculty or working in our program, and that's going to be really exciting when that happens. It's a long-term investment, but a really important one to do, and to do it in a way that reflects our patients and reflects our values. And to do that, we have to create sustainable jobs. It's something we continue to strive to do, and to really think about how can you be in this for your whole career and stay in this work and continue to do it because it's rewarding, and because it's rewarding in a way that we can all do over time. And I'll just put in my plug now for working together. We heard about the interprofessional work, but there's a tendency to want to kind of divide up into our own disciplines in our own professional societies. And something I've been really thinking a lot about is the power that we could have if we all came together. We're not a very big specialty as they go. And by coming together, we will have greater influence, greater power, greater voice for the work that we want to do. Yes, the hierarchy may very well follow us into this big organization that I imagine, but that's something that I think we can deal with, and we can figure out ways to empower everyone within the field, within a single organization. And maybe that's one of the things I'm going to start working on myself, and welcome you to join. And then the last is to advance our science. there's, man, has medicine come a long way. We talked about HIV a lot today. I think it's a very profound experience for those of us who lived through it. It's hard to live through it without having been impacted by it. I suspect future generations may talk about COVID in the same way, and what a profound impact it had on our work and the way we think about our work. Somebody's going to tell the story that, there was a day when we used to go to a place to see patients in person, and now we don't do that anymore, and COVID will be sort of the trigger for why that happened. But how do we advance our own science? I think Irene shared with us how we can repurpose drugs from other fields and use them, and I think that's a really important point. If the drug is already out there and we can use it because it works in a particular way, let's do that. But maybe there are other things that we need to do to advance the science of palliative care so that we can improve our competence. We were talking yesterday at the reception. I was talking with Laura, I think, and with Joanna and Kwame. What scares you about a palliative care consult? Like, what do you worry about when you get a consult? We all had our things, but we all agreed that nausea was like super not pleasant, first of all, as an experience, but also just, what are the treatments? They're just, like, they're good, but they're not great. You sort of run out. There are opportunities to improve care that really do require more science. And I hope that we will be involved in that we will partner with some of our colleagues here at UCSF doing groundbreaking work in these areas to find ways to do that. So I'd say the future is bright, even in these uncertain times. The future is bright for palliative care. As I look out and see all of you and the folks on Zoom and the people who are covering the service today and people who couldn't be here with us today, I'm incredibly optimistic about where things are going. But I tend towards that, but that's okay. I am optimistic because of you, because of your excellence, your courage, your kindness, your hope, and your love. And together we're going to build the future to ensure that everyone who needs palliative care gets it, and that what we bring to healthcare, to our patients, to the work that we do, is going to infuse all of healthcare. People said this many times today. Why are we working as an interprofessional team but others don't? Well, they should too. Why do we focus on the whole person but everyone else focuses on an organ system? Well, they should too. And I think these are the values that we bring to care that can really transform the experience of healthcare for our loved ones and for our patients. We really focused today on the micro and the macro. So we really focused on patients, which I think is really the essence of our work. And yet we also took a view back about what are the policies, kind of the macro level. And of course, although Mike did not read a poem, I am going to. Because you can't finish without a poem. And I was looking for just what's the right poem here. And I found this poem that I hadn't read in a long time that really struck me because I thought it really captured this idea of the macro, kind of the big picture, but also just how it all comes down to these individual interactions ultimately that we have with our students, with our patients, and with each other, and how important that focus on the immediacy and the things that in front of us are. And so I'm going to read the poem. I'll read it once, and then I invite everyone to just to celebrate. I think right around the back. If you haven't eaten enough today, I'm shocked, but hope you saved a little bit of room. Because we do have a celebration together. All right, here we go. This poem is called Only This Morning by Dan Gerber. In 100 trillion years, an actual number, though we can't begin to grasp it, the last traces of our universe will be not even a memory, with no memory to lament it. The last dust of the last star will not drift in the great nothing out of which everything we love or imagine eventually comes. Yet every day, every 4 hours, around the clock, Debbie prepares her goat's milk mix for the orphaned filly who sucks down all 3 liters of it gratefully, it seems, as if it matters more than anything in the universe. And it does. At this moment, while the sun is still 4 hours from rising, on the only day that matters. Thank you all very much for the great work that you do and for being such wonderful, wonderful colleagues and friends. Thanks.